A woman scarred by loss finds shelter in the rigid silence of an imposing mansion. There, a quiet boy wounded by grief slowly awakens to life, guided by small gestures of affection. But the connection that grows between them threatens the control of those who prefer appearances over truth. When the mask of lies falls before the cameras, courage turns fate into belonging. The sun had not yet risen above the horizon when Lucy Peterson stepped off the bus at the entrance to Bellevue Estate, one of the largest coffee producers in the Blue Ridge Mountains region of Virginia. She carried only a worn suitcase and the weight of memories she preferred not to revisit. The property, once exclusively agricultural, now housed the opulent residence of the Mendoza family, built in colonial style and recently renovated with all the luxury money could buy. Lucy adjusted her curly hair and walked along the dirt road leading to the main house. Her heart pounded with the prospect of the new job. After years of working in different homes in New York City, often without a formal contract, the opportunity for a permanent position in a high-end residence seemed like a necessary fresh start. Especially after what had happened to Gabriel, her son. "Don't think about that now," she murmured to herself, as she watched the sunrise begin to color the extensive coffee plantations. The beauty of the place contrasted with the knot in her throat. At the gatehouse, a young security guard, no older than 25, greeted her with a discreet smile. "Good morning, you must be the new employee." "My name is Matthew." "That's right." "I'm Lucy. I'm here to work at the main house." "I'll take you there. Ms. Bernice is already waiting." Matthew drove her in an electric golf cart through impeccably manicured gardens. As they approached, Lucy admired the imposing structure. A two-story mansion with wide verandas, white columns, and tall windows. It looked like something out of a period film, but with modern touches that revealed the recent renovation. As Bernice waited at the service entrance, a woman in her 60s with a rigid posture and an analytical gaze. Her grey hair was pulled back in a perfect bun, not a strand out of place. "Punctuality is essential in this house," was her first sentence, after checking her wristwatch. "Come, I'll show you your accommodations and explain your duties." Lucy's assigned room was in the service area, but it was surprisingly comfortable. A single bed with a new mattress, a small wardrobe, a dresser, and a private bathroom. It was more than she had had in recent years. "Take a shower, put on your uniform, and meet me in the kitchen in 30 minutes. Staff breakfast is served at 6. At 6:30 we begin service." Following the instructions, Lucy was soon in the kitchen, where she met Josephine, the cook, a woman with a warm, easy smile and skilled hands, who offered her a hearty breakfast. "Eat well, dear. The work here isn't easy, but the food is good, thank God." During breakfast, Ms. Bernice explained the house rules with military precision. "At Bellevue Estate, we follow a strict protocol. The family values discretion. You are to clean, organize, and be as invisible as possible. Mr. Richard Mendoza is a busy businessman who divides his time between New York City and the estate. His fiancée, Dr. Camilla Watson, is a renowned lawyer and demands perfection." Ms. Bernice paused as if carefully choosing her next words. "And then there's the boy, William. He's 10 years old and, well, he's been through a difficult time. 6 months ago, he suffered an accident at the property's waterfall, along with his mother, Mrs. Helen. She didn't survive. Since then, he uses crutches, barely speaks, and rarely leaves his room. Mr. Mendoza hired the best specialists, but progress is slow." The housekeeper lowered her voice. "You are not to interact directly with him unless requested. Your job is to keep his room and toys organized, change bedding, and leave meals on the side table. Nothing more." After breakfast, Ms. Bernice gave Lucy a tour of the mansion. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, antique restored furniture, and works of art composed the sophisticated ambiance. Portraits of the Mendoza family adorned the walls, and Lucy couldn't help but notice the serene beauty of the late Helen in a large photo in the main living room, alongside Richard and little William, all smiling in front of the waterfall. "This wing is reserved for Mr. Mendoza. The office is private. You only clean it when he's not here. This other one is Dr. Watson's, for when she's at the estate. And here at the end of the corridor is William's room." Miss Bernice knocked softly on the door before entering. The room was dim, with the curtains half open. It was spacious and decorated with adventure and space themes for children, but it had a melancholic air, as if joy had been suspended in time. On the bed, Lucy saw only a small mound under the sheets. "Good morning, William. This is Lucy, the new employee. She will take care of organizing your room." There was no response. The housekeeper whispered. "He rarely responds. Leave his breakfast on the table and leave. If you need to do a deeper cleaning, wait until he's in physical therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays." Leaving the room, they continued the visit. Lucy received a list of daily and weekly tasks, specific times for each room, and detailed instructions on cleaning products. "Dr. Watson arrives this afternoon from New York City. Mr. Mendoza is on a business trip and returns next week. You must be invisible, but leave everything impeccable." Throughout the day, Lucy carried out her tasks with precision and discretion. As she tidied one of the corridors, she heard a noise coming from William's room. She approached and, after hesitating for a moment, knocked softly. "William, is everything all right in there?" Silence. She pushed the door ajar and saw the boy sitting on the floor trying to reach a metal car that had rolled under the bed. His crutches lay beside him. His eyes, when they met hers, were full of frustration and wounded pride. Lucy could have simply called Ms. Bernice, but something in the boy's gaze made her enter the room. Without saying a word, she picked up the red car, placed it in the boy's hand, and repositioned the crutches within his reach. She didn't offer to help him up, realizing that it might humiliate him further. "I loved toy cars when I was little too. My dad said they weren't for girls, but I didn't care." William didn't respond, but his eyes followed Lucy as she walked to the door. "If you need anything, just call." "My name is Lucy." She left, closing the door softly behind her. In the corridor, she found Ms. Bernice with a stern expression. "I told you not to interact with the boy. I'm sorry. I heard a noise and thought something might have happened. Next time, call me. Everyone must know their place in this house. And now hurry with the dining room cleaning. Dr. Watson will arrive in 2 hours." Lucy nodded and headed for the dining room, but she couldn't get the image of the lonely boy out of her mind. She recognized in him a pain she knew too well: loss, emptiness, the feeling that the world kept spinning even when hers had stopped. As she polished the silverware, she promised herself that even while following the house rules, she would find a way to bring a little light into that boy's eyes. After all, she knew what it was like to need someone who simply cared, without asking questions, without demanding progress, just offering presence. Camilla Watson arrived at Bellevue Estate exactly at 5 p.m., driving her own imported SUV along the private road. The 35-year-old lawyer wore an impeccable tailored suit and discreet but visibly expensive accessories. Her straight dark hair fell perfectly over her shoulders, and her red lipstick contrasted with her fair skin. Upon exiting the vehicle, she handed the keys to Matthew and greeted Ms. Bernice, who was already waiting at the main entrance. "Good afternoon, Bernice. How are things here? Has William improved?" "Good afternoon, Doctor. The boy is still the same. He barely leaves his room, hardly touches his meals. That's a shame. Richard is so worried about him. By the way, have they hired the new employee?" "Yes, she arrived early today. She's adapting to the house rules." Camilla raised an eyebrow. "I hope you made it clear what her place is. The last one gave the boy too much freedom and ended up confusing things." "Don't worry, Doctor. I gave all the necessary instructions." Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Lucy was helping Josephine prepare dinner. The cook chopped vegetables for a soup, humming softly. "Dr. Watson likes everything just so," Josephine commented. "If anything is out of place, she notices it right away." "Is she very close to William?" Josephine looked around before answering, lowering her voice. "She tries, but the boy doesn't open up to her. In fact, he hasn't opened up to anyone since Mrs. Helen passed away. Poor boy, he was so cheerful before. And his father, how is he with him?" "Mr. Mendoza is a good man, but he's lost. After the accident, he plunged into work. I think it's his way of dealing with grief. He hires the best doctors for William, but he lacks what money can't buy, you know. Time, patience, presence." Lucy nodded, understanding. She herself had buried herself in work after losing Gabriel. It was a form of exhaustion that prevented painful thoughts, at least during the day. Late that night, after everyone had retired, Lucy prepared a small, colorful note on a piece of notebook paper. With a blue ink pen, she simply wrote, "Good morning. Today will be a better day." She carefully folded it into a paper airplane and decided she would leave it at William's bedroom door the next morning. At 5 in the morning, even before Miss Bernice woke up, Lucy was already on her feet. She silently slipped down the corridor and placed the paper airplane under William's door. It was a small gesture, possibly useless, but she felt she had to try. The following days followed a strict routine. Lucy performed her tasks perfectly, cleaning, organizing, and remaining discreet. Each morning she left a new note for William. "Courage. The sun is shining today. I saw a toucan in the garden." There was no response, but she persisted. One afternoon, while mopping the corridor near the boys' room, Lucy heard a sound that made her stop, a brief, almost imperceptible laugh. She smiled to herself and continued her work, her heart a little lighter. On Friday of that week, Richard Mendoza returned from his trip. He was a tall man, 40 years old, with the first grey hairs at his temples, tired brown eyes, and a posture that revealed the responsibility he carried. Camilla greeted him with a restrained hug, appropriate for the sobriety of the house. "How is our boy?" Richard asked as they walked to the office. "The same, dear, but we're doing everything we can." In the office, Ms. Bernice presented detailed reports on the house's operations and updates on William. The physical therapist says he's physically better, but he remains resistant to socialization. The psychologist suggested a change of approach, perhaps bringing other children to visit him. Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We've tried that. He refuses to see his cousins or old school friends. It's as if he's built a wall around himself." "I have some news about the negotiations with the European distributors," Camilla interrupted, skillfully changing the subject to something she knew would cheer Richard up. While they talked, Lucy had been assigned to tidy William's room during his physical therapy session. As she organized the books on the shelf, she found a notebook hidden among them. Opening it, she saw that it was a diary with drawings and small notes. On the most recent page, there was a drawing of a paper airplane identical to the ones she left every morning. With a discreet smile, Lucy put the notebook back in its place and finished her task. As she left, she met William returning from physical therapy, supported by the professional. "Good morning, William. I finished tidying your room." The boy didn't respond verbally, but his eyes met hers for a moment longer than usual. The physical therapist seemed surprised by this eye contact, however brief. That night, Lucy was called to the dining room to serve the family dinner, as one of the responsible employees had needed to be absent. It was her first time interacting formally with Richard and Camilla. "This is the new employee." "Lucy," Ms. Bernice introduced. Richard nodded politely, while Camilla observed her with an evaluating gaze. "Ms. Bernice told me you worked in several homes in New York City," Camilla commented. "Why did you decide to come to the countryside?" "I needed a change, Dr. Watson, and the opportunity to work in a fixed place with a formal contract was very welcome. Well, I hope you're adapting to our rules. This is not an ordinary house. We have our particularities." Dinner was progressing silently when Ms. Bernice rushed into the room. "Mr. Mendoza, I'm sorry, but William has a high fever. The nurse has already given him the antipyretic, but he's very agitated." Richard immediately stood up, followed by Camilla. Lucy remained in the room clearing the plates, but her mind was on the sick boy. She knew well the despair of a high fever, the sleepless nights beside Gabriel's bed. Later, when everyone had retired, Lucy couldn't sleep. She got up and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. Passing through the corridor, she heard sounds coming from William's room. They weren't screams, but low, restless moans, the kind of sound a feverish child makes in discomfort. Without thinking twice, she knocked softly on the door and entered. The nurse had momentarily stepped out, perhaps to get more medication. William was in bed, his face red with fever, his hair matted to his damp forehead. Lucy approached, picked up the damp towel from the basin beside the bed, and gently placed it on the boy's forehead. "It'll pass, William. Breathe deeply." The boy's eyes opened, feverish and scared. "Do you want me to sing you a song? It always helps to calm." Without waiting for a response, Lucy began to sing softly a lullaby her grandmother had taught her as a child, a simple melody about stars and nighttime protection. As she sang, she continued to cool the boy's face with the damp towel. Gradually, William calmed down. His breathing became more regular, and his eyes, still open, no longer showed so much despair. Lucy pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed, continuing to hum softly, as if time didn't matter, as if there were no rules to follow. "My mom used to sing to me," William suddenly said, his voice hoarse from disuse. They were his first words to Lucy, and she received them as a precious gift. "Your mother must have been a very special person," she simply replied. "She was," the boy murmured, closing his eyes. "I miss her." "I know," Lucy said, gently holding his hand. "It's normal to miss someone, and it's okay not to be okay." William fell asleep, holding Lucy's hand, and she remained there watching over his sleep, singing softly, as she had done so many times with her own son. She didn't realize that from the half-open door, Richard was observing the scene with a mixture of surprise and emotion. It was the first time in 6 months that he had seen his son sleep peacefully, without nightmares, without suppressed crying. At that moment, Richard felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. And Lucy, unaware she was being watched, continued to sing, moved only by the compassion born from the recognition of shared pain between her and that boy. The next morning, Lucy woke with a start, fearing she had overslept. She had stayed by William's side until late, returning to her room only when the nurse came back for her shift. To her surprise, Ms. Bernice did not appear to reprimand her for entering the boy's room without authorization. During breakfast in the kitchen, Josephine gave her a curious look. "Looks like you did something right, dear. Mr. Mendoza asked for you a little while ago." "For me? Oh my, did I do something wrong?" "I don't know, but he didn't seem angry. He asked you to go to his office after breakfast." With a pounding heart, Lucy finished her coffee and headed to Richard's office. She knocked softly on the door. "Come in," a deep voice replied. Richard was standing by the window observing the coffee plantations that stretched to the mountains. He turned when Lucy entered. "Good morning." "Lucy, please sit down." She obeyed, sitting on the edge of the chair, her hands slightly trembling. "Last night," he began, "I saw you in William's room. I apologize, sir. I know I shouldn't have entered without authorization, but I heard the boy agitated, and the nurse wasn't there at the moment." Richard raised his hand, gently interrupting her. "I didn't call you to reprimand you. Quite the opposite." He hesitated, as if choosing his words. "It was the first time in 6 months that I saw my son sleep peacefully. The first time he spoke spontaneously to anyone since—" "How the accident?" Lucy relaxed a little, but remained attentive. "What did you do? How did you achieve that?" he asked with genuine interest. "I didn't do anything special, Mr. Mendoza. I just sang a lullaby and stayed by his side. Sometimes children just need to feel that they are not alone in the dark." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Do you have children?" The question hit Lucy like a sudden blow, making her heart clench. She hesitated for a moment, considering the possibility of an evasive answer, but something in the eyes of the man before her, the same pain she knew so well, made her opt for the truth. "I did. A boy, Gabriel, he passed away 2 years ago, leukemia." The word hung between them like a palpable presence. Richard closed his eyes for an instant, in silent respect. "I'm so sorry," he said with a sincerity that transcended social formalities. "I'm truly sorry." "Thank you," she simply replied, because there was nothing more to say. After a moment of shared silence, Richard returned to the original topic. "I would like to ask for something that goes beyond your contractual obligations. I know Ms. Bernice instructed you to keep your distance from William, but I'm seeing that perhaps that's exactly what he needs. Someone who understands his pain. You want me to spend more time with him? If you can. If you're willing. Not as an employee, but as someone who cares." Lucy felt an emotion she hadn't experienced in a long time, a purpose beyond daily survival. "I'd be happy to help. Sir?" "Richard," he corrected her with a discreet smile. "You can call me Richard when we're talking like this." That same day, after lunch, which William barely touched, Lucy knocked on his door with a proposal. "How about we take a little walk in the garden? The day is beautiful, and I saw some hummingbirds near the flowers." To her surprise, after a few moments of hesitation, the boy nodded. Carefully, she helped him stand and lean on his crutches. It was the first time in weeks that William had voluntarily agreed to leave his room. The garden of Bellevue Estate was a spectacle of colors and aromas. Jasmines, trumpet trees, bougainvillea, and various native species formed a fragrant setting. Lucy walked slowly beside William, respecting his pace, without rushing him or trying to help him too much. You know, when I was a girl, I lived in a house with a small yard. But my grandmother grew herbs and flowers in every possible corner. She used to say that plants are like people. They need attention, patience, and love to bloom. William looked at her with curiosity. Does your grandmother still plant flowers? No, Lucy replied with a nostalgic smile. She passed away when I was about your age. But whenever I see a beautiful garden like this, I feel like she's nearby. They continued walking to a bench under an old oak tree. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just observing the birds and feeling the gentle breeze. Do you want me to tell you a story? Lucy asked. What kind of story? How about the story of the warrior with the magic crutch? The boy's eyes widened with genuine interest. I've never heard that one. That's because I just made it up, she confessed, laughing. Once upon a time, there was a young warrior who was injured in a great battle. His friends thought he could never fight again, but a wise man from the mountain gave him a magic crutch, which not only helped him walk, but could also transform into a powerful sword when needed. And so, Lucy began to weave a story about courage, overcoming adversity, and discovering one's own worth. William listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or suggesting developments for the narrative. It was the longest conversation he had had since the accident. From one of the house windows, Camilla watched the scene with a somber gaze. Beside her, Miss Bernice seemed equally disturbed. I thought we made it clear she shouldn't get so close to the boy, Camilla commented, her voice tense. It was Mr. Mendoza himself who authorized it, Doctor. After last night, he thinks she can help the boy recover. Recover? Camilla gave a dry laugh. What can an unqualified housekeeper do that the country's best specialists couldn't? It seems she lost a child, something like that. Mr. Mendoza thinks this connection might help. Camilla moved away from the window, nervously adjusting her engagement ring, an impressive solitaire Richard had given her 3 months after Helen's death, in a moment of emotional vulnerability that she had known how to exploit well. We need to keep an eye on this situation, Bernice. Richard is emotionally fragile and might confuse gratitude with other feelings. It's our duty to protect him from misunderstandings. The housekeeper nodded, perfectly understanding the subtext. Both knew what was truly at stake. With Helen's death, the Mendoza fortune had fallen entirely into Richard's hands, with William as the sole heir. Marriage to Camilla would solidify her position in the family, but for that, it was essential that nothing and no one interfered with her plans. In the following days, a different routine was established at Bellevue Estate. After completing her morning tasks, Lucy spent a few hours with William. In addition to garden walks, she told him stories, played board games with him, and gradually encouraged him to resume activities he had abandoned, such as drawing and assembling puzzles. One afternoon, while Richard was working in his office, he heard something that made him stop typing and prick up his ears, the sound of a child's laughter, clear and genuine. He got up and followed the sound to the back veranda, where Lucy and William were sitting on the floor, playing a card game she had improvised. No fair. You're cheating, William accused, laughing. Me never. You're just a sore loser, young man, she retorted, feigning indignation. Richard remained at the door, observing the scene with a lump in his throat. It had been so long since he had seen his son like this, so much like the cheerful boy he was before the tragedy. Something about that simple woman had achieved what thousands of dollars in therapy had not. Dad, William exclaimed upon seeing him, and the words sounded like music. Come play with us. Richard hesitated only for a second, before joining them on the veranda floor, setting aside his image as a serious businessman to be just a father playing with his son. Lucy discreetly stood up. I'll leave you two alone. I have some tasks to finish. No, stay, William pleaded, holding her hand. You have to teach Dad the rules, too. Richard met Lucy's eyes and smiled, a silent gesture of gratitude that she received with a nod of understanding. All right, but only for half an hour more. Then I have to help Josephine with dinner. Sitting on the veranda floor, under the golden light of the late Virginia afternoon, the three formed a picture of simplicity and joy that had not been seen in that house for a long time. William animatedly explained the rules of the game. Richard feigned confusion to make him laugh more, and Lucy observed the interaction between father and son with a serene smile, feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, she was helping to heal not only William's heart, but also her own. None of them noticed Camilla standing in the living room doorway, observing the scene with a mixture of jealousy and calculation. In her mind, she was already beginning to formulate a plan to deal with the unexpected threat Lucy represented to her objectives. The first phase would be subtle, small incidents to undermine the employee's credibility. Then, if necessary, more drastic measures would be taken. At the end of the day, when William had already retired to his room, Richard called Lucy to the office again. "I have no words to thank you for what you are doing for my son," he said, with emotion in his voice. "In a few days you've made more progress than months of therapy. You don't need to thank me. William is a special boy. He just needs time and space to process his emotions. Even so, I want you to know that I recognize your effort. From today on, in addition to your regular tasks, you are officially designated as William's companion. I will speak with Ms. Bernice about reorganizing your responsibilities, and of course there will be an adjustment to your salary." Lucy felt immense relief. The more defined position would give her legitimacy to continue helping the boy without having to worry so much about the house rules. "Thank you, Richard. I promise to do my best." "I'm sure you will," he replied, and for a moment, his eyes lingered on hers, longer than would be appropriate between an employer and an employee. "You assigned the cleaner to take care of your son?" Camilla's voice rose higher than usual in the privacy of the couple's bedroom. "Richard, that's absurd. We have qualified professionals available." Richard, sitting on the edge of the bed untying his shoes, sighed deeply. "It's not a matter of qualification, Camilla. It's a matter of connection. You saw William today. He laughed, he talked, he wanted to leave his room. I can't remember the last time that happened. And you don't find that strange? A woman who appears out of nowhere and in a few days achieves what no specialist could. Has it not occurred to you that there might be some interest behind this?" Richard stood up, visibly irritated. "What interest?" "She lost a son, Camilla. She understands William's pain in a way none of us can." "Or that's the story she invented to get closer to you," Camilla retorted, crossing her arms. "Have you checked her background? Asked for references beyond the basics? We're talking about the heir to one of the largest agribusiness fortunes in America." "Enough, Camilla. I'm not discussing this now. The decision is made." He left the room, leaving her alone with her growing anger. Camilla picked up her cell phone and dialed a private number. "I need complete information on a certain Lucy Peterson. Immediately." The next day, Lucy noticed a change in the attitude of the housekeeper and some other staff members. Ms. Bernice, who had always been strict but respectful, now barely disguised her displeasure. Small comments and disapproving glances followed her through the mansion's corridors. After lunch, while helping William with a new puzzle on the veranda, Camilla approached with an artificial smile. "Lucy, can we talk privately for a moment?" "Of course, Dr. Watson. William, keep working on the edges. I'll be right back." Camilla led her to a small sitting room, closing the door behind them. "I'll be direct," she began, her smile instantly disappearing. "I don't know what your game is, but I'm watching you." Lucy frowned, confused. "Pardon?" "Your sudden closeness to the family. This special interest in William. This convenient story about having lost a child. Dr. Watson, it's not a game. I'm just doing what Mr. Mendoza asked me to do." "Ah, it's Richard now, is it?" Camilla took a step forward, invading Lucy's personal space. "Listen carefully. This family has been through enough suffering. I will not allow an opportunist to take advantage of their emotional vulnerability. With all due respect, you are mistaken about my intentions." "Respect?" Camilla laughed dryly. "Do you know your place in this house? You are an employee, Lucy. A housekeeper, replaceable, don't forget that." Before Lucy could respond, Camilla had already left, leaving her stunned by the open hostility. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, she returned to the veranda where William was waiting. "What did Aunt Camilla want?" the boy asked without looking up from his puzzle. "Nothing important," she replied, forcing a smile. "Let's see how you're doing with those pieces." That night, during family dinner, Josephine rushed into the dining room, distressed. "Mr. Mendoza, I'm sorry, but I just found this in the laundry basket." She showed a fine crystal goblet with an evident crack. "It's from the set Mrs. Helen brought from Venice." Richard examined the piece with a frown. Who was cleaning the crystal cabinet today? A heavy silence settled until Miss Bernice cleared her throat. It was Lucy, sir. I assigned her the crystal cleaning this morning. Camilla gave Richard a significant look. Perhaps we should review some assignments, shouldn't we? The next day, other incidents began to occur with suspicious frequency. An embroidered pillowcase belonging to Helen disappeared, only to be found by Miss Bernice in the cleaning supplies closet. A valuable Chinese porcelain vase was discovered, with a small chip after Lucy had passed through the room. A cleaning cloth was forgotten on the grand piano, suggesting carelessness. Each occurrence was reported directly to Richard, always in Camilla's presence, who subtly reinforced the narrative that Lucy, despite her connection with William, might not be trustworthy with the family's material possessions. Accidents happen, Richard would say, but his expression revealed growing concern. Meanwhile, the relationship between Lucy and William flourished. The boy had made significant progress in his mobility, now using only one crutch instead of two. His physical therapy sessions, once a torment, became challenges he faced with renewed determination, especially when Lucy accompanied him. One morning during breakfast, William surprised everyone by saying, "Good morning, Dad, good morning." Aunt Camilla. It was the first time he had initiated a conversation spontaneously at the table. Richard almost dropped his coffee cup, emotional. "Good morning, son. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Lucy told me a story about an astronaut visiting different planets. I dreamed I was the astronaut." Camilla forced a smile, but her eyes remained cold. "How interesting, William. But wouldn't it be better to read stories from books appropriate for your age? Made-up stories can be confusing." "I like her stories," the boy simply replied, returning to eat his cereal. Richard smiled, ignoring his fiancée's comment. His son's progress was all that mattered. Later that day, while William was in physical therapy, Lucy was called to Richard's office. Upon entering, she found him accompanied by Camilla and Miss Bernice. The atmosphere was visibly tense. "Lucy, I need to ask you something directly," Richard began, his tone serious. "Do you know anything about a pendant that belonged to Helen? A small teardrop-shaped emerald?" Lucy felt a chill down her spine. "No, sir. I've never seen such a pendant." "It's curious," Camilla interjected, "because it was kept in the closet safe, and last night I noticed it had disappeared." "I suggest we review the security cameras," Ms. Bernice said, "to eliminate any suspicion." Richard nodded reluctantly. "Matthew, please bring the recordings from the camera in our bedroom corridor from the last 48 hours. The young security guard brought a tablet and displayed the recordings. To Lucy's horror, there was a clear sequence showing her entering the couple's closet, apparently putting something in her bag and leaving in a hurry. "That's impossible," she exclaimed. "I never entered that closet. I never took anything." "The images are quite clear," Camilla said with false sadness. "Richard, I'm so sorry. I warned you about giving too much trust." "I didn't do it," Lucy insisted, feeling tears of indignation well up in her eyes. "Someone is framing me. You can search my room, my things, you won't find anything." "We already did that," Ms. Bernice replied, placing a small velvet pouch on the table. "I found this hidden at the bottom of your bag." Inside the pouch was a delicate emerald pendant. Lucy felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. The trap was perfect. Richard ran a hand over his face, visibly disturbed. "Lucy, I really wanted to believe you. For William's sake." "Richard, please," she pleaded. "I would never do something like that. Think about everything that's happened in the last few days. These accidents, broken things, missing items. Someone is trying to harm me. The question is, why would someone do that?" Camilla questioned with an innocent air. "Because," Lucy hesitated, aware that directly accusing her employer's fiancé would only make her seem more guilty. "I don't know why, but I know I didn't do it. For William, believe me." Richard looked at her for a long time, the conflict evident on his face. "I don't want to involve the police," he finally said. "For William's sake, as you yourself said. He's been through too much trauma. We'll resolve this discreetly." He paused. "You will be transferred to another company property in Texas. You'll receive a good letter of recommendation and all your severance pay." "And William?" Lucy's voice faltered. "We'll say you had to go back to New York City for family reasons. In time, he'll get over it. He'll regress, Lucy stated, with certainty in her voice. Everything we've achieved these days. I'll take care of that personally, Camilla interrupted with a barely disguised victorious smile. After all, I'll be his mother soon. Lucy felt a cold fury run through her body. She knew she was being wronged, but she also knew that any further protest would only worsen her situation. How much time do I have to pack my things? Until tomorrow morning, Richard replied, avoiding her gaze. A car will take you to the bus station. I prefer that you don't say goodbye to William. It would be complicated to explain. Lucy nodded stiffly and left the office with what remained of her dignity. In the corridor, she crossed paths with Matthew, who lowered his eyes, visibly uncomfortable. In her room at the back of the house, Lucy finally allowed herself to cry, not for herself, but for the boy who once again would lose someone important without explanation or farewell, and for the injustice of it all. As she packed her few possessions, she mentally reconstructed the events of the past weeks. William's progress, her growing closeness with Richard, Camilla's evident jealousy, the convenient accidents, the implausible recording. Something didn't fit in the recording. She had never entered that closet. How could there be images showing otherwise? The answer came in a flash: editing. Someone had manipulated the images, but to prove it, she would need inside help. In the dark of her room, she formulated a desperate plan. If Camilla was willing to go so far to remove her from the path, what else would she be willing to do? The concern for William was not just emotional now. There was something darker at play. Dawn was breaking when Lucy, unable to sleep, heard a light knock on her door. She opened it cautiously to find Matthew, the young security guard, with a tense expression. "Can I come in?" "I need to talk to you," he whispered, looking over his shoulder to make sure he wasn't observed. Lucy hesitated for a moment, but something in the young man's eyes convinced her. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. "You didn't steal that pendant," Matthew stated without preamble. "How can you be sure?" "Because the images were manipulated. I've worked in security for 5 years. I know edited footage when I see it." Lucy felt a glimmer of hope. "Why are you telling me this? Why would you help me?" Matthew sat on the edge of the bed, nervously rubbing his hands. "My mother was a housekeeper like you. I've seen many times how people are wronged in these kinds of situations." He paused. "And also because I've been watching what's happening in this house. I saw how you helped the boy, and how Dr. Watson reacted to it. Do you think she manipulated the images?" "Not directly. She has a cousin who works with technology. He was here 2 days ago, supposedly to update the security system. I thought it was strange at the time, but I didn't question it." Lucy processed the information, her brain working quickly. "Matthew, I need your help. If I leave tomorrow, I fear for what might happen to William. There's something wrong with this whole situation." "What do you mean?" "Do you remember when Dr. Watson brought William a special juice? I stopped him from drinking it because I smelled a strange chemical. Then there was the incident of the ball conveniently rolling in front of his crutches on the stone stairs." Matthew's eyes widened with understanding. "You think she's trying to harm the boy?" "I don't know for sure, but I know she's in a hurry to formalize her marriage to Mr. Mendoza. I heard her confirm the address by phone yesterday. It's at the Central Registry Office at 10 a.m. The young security guard was silent for a few moments, clearly disturbed by the implications. "What do you need from me?" "Access to the original unedited recordings. And I need to know if there are cameras elsewhere that might have recorded something important, like in the pergola where the ball appeared, or in the pantry where drinks are prepared. There are cameras in almost every room except bedrooms and bathrooms. But not all are monitored regularly." Matthew thought for a moment. "I can make a copy of the raw files before any editing, and specifically check those locations you mentioned." "When can you do this?" "Right now. I'm on the night shift. I'll be back in an hour at most." When Matthew left, Lucy sat on the bed trying to organize her thoughts. What had started as a personal injustice now seemed much more sinister. If her suspicions were correct, Camilla wasn't just trying to drive her away from the family. She was planning something that put William at real risk. Exactly 1 hour later, Matthew returned, a USB drive clutched in his hand. "I found something," he said, connecting the device to the small laptop Lucy used for video calls with her sister in New York City. "Look at this." The first recording showed the pergola where William had stumbled days earlier. From an angle that had not been shown before, it was clearly possible to see a feminine hand emerging from behind a pillar and deliberately pushing a ball towards the boy's crutches. The person did not appear in full, but one detail was unmistakable: a gold bracelet with characteristic charms, identical to the one Camilla wore daily. "My God," Lucy murmured, horrified. The second recording was even more incriminating. It showed the pantry, where a figure wearing gardening gloves rummaged through Lucy's bag, which had been momentarily left on a chair. The person deposited something small at the bottom of the bag, presumably the emerald pendant. Again, the face was not visible, but as she made the movement, an engagement ring sparkled under the light, the diamond solitaire that Richard had given Camilla. "Is this enough proof?" Matthew asked. "It might not be conclusive for the police, but it will certainly make Mr. Mendoza question his fiancée's version." Lucy bit her lip, thoughtful. "The problem is, I have no way to show it to him before I leave tomorrow. And I'm sure Dr. Watson will ensure I'm taken away before he wakes up." "What if you didn't leave tomorrow?" Matthew suggested. "What if, instead, you went to the registry office where the documents will be signed? How do you know where the signing will be?" "I heard Dr. Watson confirm the address by phone yesterday. It's at the Central Registry Office at 10 a.m. A plan began to form in Lucy's mind. It was risky and could cost Matthew his job, as well as her own professional future. But there was no alternative if she wanted to protect William. "Would you really help me do this?" "Why?" Matthew looked out the window at the starry Virginia night before replying, "Because my younger sister was in the same hospital room as your son Gabriel. I remember seeing you there sleepless nights, always singing to him even when the doctor said that—" He hesitated. "I never forgot your strength. And now, seeing how dedicated you are to William, even being practically a stranger, some people just deserve for us to fight for them." Lucy felt tears in her eyes, surprised by this unexpected thread of destiny that connected them. "Thank you, Matthew. I'll need your help in the morning." The next day, at 5:30 a.m. before the house woke up, Matthew knocked softly on Lucy's door. "The car that was supposed to take you has a mysterious mechanical problem," he informed with a small smile. "I managed to convince Miss Bernice that I can take you to the bus station in my own car after my shift. She agreed, as long as I ensured you wouldn't have contact with anyone in the family." Lucy breathed a sigh of relief. "And the USB drive?" "Here." He handed her the small device. "It has everything we need. I've already saved copies elsewhere for safety." At 9:30 a.m., when Richard's car left for the registry office with him, Camilla and the family lawyer, Matthew and Lucy were already on their way in the security guard's old sedan. "Are you sure about this?" Matthew asked as he drove. "You're risking a lot." "I am. If there's a chance William is in danger, I can't just leave." At the registry office, Richard, Camilla, and the lawyer, Dr. Paul, were already in the notary public's room, discussing the final details of the documents. It was a revision of Richard's will, naming Camilla as William's legal guardian in case of his absence, as well as asset adjustments that would grant her significant access to the family's wealth after the marriage. "Mr. Mendoza, these documents are in order," explained the notary public, a middle-aged man with a solemn air. "Upon your signature, they will take immediate effect." Camilla smiled discreetly, watching the pen in Richard's hand. 5 years of careful planning were about to come to fruition. Since meeting Richard at an agribusiness event, shortly after he became a widower, she had meticulously charted her path to this moment. As Richard was about to sign, a commotion was heard in the reception area. "I'm sorry, madam, but without an appointment, we cannot allow your entry," the secretary insisted. "It's an emergency." Lucy's voice was unmistakable. "Please, I need to speak with Mr. Richard Mendoza." "It's about his son." Richard immediately stood up, recognizing the voice. Camilla tried to stop him. "Don't pay attention to her, Richard. She's just trying to cause trouble. She must be desperate for being caught stealing." But the mention of William had already captured Richard's full attention. He opened the room door, finding Lucy being blocked by 2 security guards. "Let her in," he ordered. Lucy, breathless and with determined eyes, entered the room, followed by Matthew. "Mr. Mendoza, before you sign any documents, you need to see this." She extended the USB drive. "These are recordings from the estate's security cameras, unedited." "What are you talking about?" Camilla's voice rose an octave. Richard, this is absurd. She's desperate. The notary public, realizing the gravity of the situation, intervened. Mr. Mendoza, if there is any issue that could affect the legitimacy of these documents, I have a legal obligation to verify it. It's a farce, Camilla protested. This woman was caught stealing a valuable sentimental item from the family. No, Dr. Watson, Matthew countered, stepping forward. The farce was the edited images you had your cousin insert into the system. A tense silence filled the room. We have a computer in the next room, the notary public offered. We can verify the content of this device right now. Richard, with a grave expression, nodded. The small group headed to the adjacent room, where a computer was available. The USB drive was connected, and the recordings began to play. The first image was clear, the hand with Camilla's characteristic bracelet pushing the ball towards William's crutches. The second showed the same hand, with the engagement ring sparkling, planting the pendant in Lucy's bag. Richard's face transformed with each second of video. Shock, disbelief, and finally a contained fury. That proves nothing. Camilla exclaimed, desperate. It could be anyone. Anyone can wear a similar bracelet, a similar ring. Dr. Paul, Richard said to the lawyer, his voice controlled, these images have a watermark from the estate's internal security system. Can they be verified for authenticity? The lawyer examined the files carefully. Yes, they have the system's digital timestamps. They appear genuine. At that moment, the room door opened and a small figure limped in, supported by a single crutch. Dad? William called. Richard turned, surprised. Son, what are you doing here? Matthew brought me in the other car, the boy explained. He said Lucy needed help to tell the truth. Camilla advanced towards the boy. William, darling, this is no place for you. Let's go home. The boy recoiled, clutching his crutch. No, I know what you did. I saw when you threw the ball in front of me that day. And the juice you wanted to give me tasted strange when I tried a little bit secretly. The entire room fell into absolute silence. All attention turned to the child. William, Richard said, kneeling in front of his son. Are you sure of what you're saying? I am, Dad. Lucy saved me that day. And she would never take Mom's pendant. She helped me not to be afraid anymore. Richard slowly rose, turning to Camilla. The look on his face was one of pure contempt. Are you denying all of this? Camilla looked around frantically like a cornered animal. Richard, you can't believe these people. This insignificant security guard, this manipulative housekeeper, a confused boy. That confused boy is my son, Richard replied, his voice dangerously low. And he has never lied to me. The notary public, who had observed the entire scene with increasing alarm, intervened. I'm sorry, but I cannot in good conscience proceed with this documentation. There is evidence of possible coercion or bad faith, and if the accusations about attempts to harm a child are true, this is a matter for law enforcement authorities. As if in response to his words, 2 police officers entered the room, discreetly called by one of the registry office employees who had perceived the gravity of the accusations. What's happening here? One of the officers asked. Camilla, seeing her situation rapidly deteriorating, made one last desperate attempt. She lunged towards the door, pushing one of the registry office security guards, but was quickly detained by the police. You don't understand, she screamed as she was restrained. I deserved that fortune. I spent years planning everything, enduring that whiny brat, that depressed widower. It was my right. Her own words definitively condemned her. The police handcuffed her, informing her of her rights and the preliminary charges, attempted fraud, falsification of evidence, and, more seriously, attempted intentional harm to a minor. As Camilla was led away, still shouting threats and accusations, Richard protectively hugged William. Then he looked at Lucy, who remained standing silently beside Matthew. I almost made the worst mistake of my life, he said, his voice choked. I ask for your forgiveness for doubting you. Lucy smiled softly. The important thing is that William is safe now. Thanks to you, Richard replied. You didn't just give me back my son. You gave me back to myself too. The days following the incident at the registry office unfolded in a whirlwind of emotions and changes at Bellevue Estate. Camilla was taken into custody as investigations into her actions deepened. With each new testimony and piece of evidence recovered, The picture became clearer and more disturbing. The morning after the events, Ms. Bernice knocked on Richard's office door, her shoulders hunched with the weight of guilt. "Sir, I've come to hand in my resignation," she said, avoiding the direct gaze of her employer of so many years. "I collaborated with Dr. Watson on things I shouldn't have. Not on the attempts against the boy, never that. But I helped undermine Lucy's credibility, spread rumors, participated in the setups with broken objects." Richard observed the housekeeper for a long moment. Ms. Bernice had served the family for almost 2 decades, long before Helen, long before William. "Why, Bernice?" "Dr. Watson convinced me that Lucy was manipulating you and the boy. She said she was protecting the family's interests." She paused, wiping a furtive tear. "And also, she knew things about my past, things I didn't want to come to light. She used that against me." Richard nodded, understanding the extent of Camilla's manipulation. It wasn't just him who had been deceived. "I won't accept your resignation, Bernice, but we'll need to rebuild trust, and you'll have to apologize to Lucy." The housekeeper agreed, relieved and ashamed at the same time. Before leaving, she added, "You should know. Josephine, Lucy, Matthew, they are the most loyal people in this house, always have been." In the garden, Lucy was sitting on a bench under the oak tree, watching William, who, for the first time, was trying to walk with only one crutch, under the supervision of the physical therapist. "Look, Lucy." "I'm doing it!" the boy exclaimed, taking careful steps. "I see. You're amazing, Will," she replied, feeling her heart swell with pride. It was as if the invisible barriers the accident had built around the boy were finally dissolving. The physical therapist had commented that the progress in recent weeks was greater than that of the previous 6 months combined. Richard approached silently, observing the scene for a few moments before making his presence known. "Looks like we have a champion here," he commented, sitting beside Lucy on the rustic bench. "He's very determined," she replied. "He reminds me a lot of you." A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched William continue his exercises. "The sheriff called me this morning," Richard finally said. "They found a detailed plan on Camilla's computer. She had been planning everything for years, ever since we met. I'm sorry, Richard. I should have noticed. The signs were there, but I was—" He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Vulnerable," Lucy completed softly. "After a loss like yours, it's natural. Now don't blame yourself for it." Richard turned to face her. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Understand so deeply. Forgive so easily." Lucy smiled, a sad and wise smile. "When you go through the worst, you learn that holding on to anger and resentment only consumes you. And life is too short for that." That late afternoon, after William had retired for a well-deserved rest after his exercises, Richard invited Lucy for tea on the veranda. The sun was setting over the coffee plantations, painting the sky orange and pink. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," he began, as the housekeeper served tea and discreetly withdrew. "About this house, about William." "That's natural. You've been through a lot." "Yes, but it's not just that." Richard placed his cup on the table. "For the first time since Helen left, I can think about the future without that feeling of emptiness. And that's thanks to you, Lucy." She felt her face flush. "I just did what any decent person would do." "No, you did much more." He hesitated, as if carefully choosing his next words. "I wanted to propose something, but I don't want you to feel pressured or obligated in any way." "What is it?" she asked with genuine curiosity. "I would like you to stay here at the estate not as an employee, but as a kind of guardian for William. A constant presence in his life." Lucy looked at him surprised. It wasn't quite what she expected to hear. "You mean like a full-time nanny?" Richard laughed, realizing how his words had sounded. "No, that's not it. I'm doing this all wrong." He took a deep breath. "What I'm trying to say is that both William and I have grown attached to you in a way that goes beyond any professional arrangement. You brought life back into this house. To us." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. The words touched a deep place within her, a place that had closed since Gabriel's passing. "Richard, You don't have to answer now," he quickly said. "Just think about it. A new beginning for all of us." The next day, during breakfast, William surprised everyone again. "Dad, can I go back to school next week?" Richard almost choked on his coffee. "School? Are you sure, son?" "Yes," the boy replied with determination in his eyes. "Lucy said I'm brave like an astronaut." And astronauts can't stay hidden forever, right? Richard looked at Lucy, who was observing the scene with a discreet smile. Lucy is absolutely right. If you feel ready, we can start with half-days, see how you adapt. Great. I want to show my crutch to my friends and tell them the stories Lucy makes up for me. The transformation was incredible. Just a few weeks earlier, William barely left his room, let alone expressed a desire to return to school and see friends. The change was not just physical, although his progress with physical therapy was remarkable, but mainly emotional. That afternoon, as Lucy organized books in the mansion's library, she felt a presence behind her. It was Ms. Bernice. "May I speak with you for a minute?" the housekeeper asked, her voice hesitant. "Of course, Ms. Bernice." The older woman seemed uncomfortable, nervously wringing her hands. "I want to apologize for the way I treated you, for believing Dr. Watson's lies, for helping her harm you." "You were manipulated like all of us," Lucy replied with kindness. "No, it was more than that. I was envious." Ms. Bernice looked at the floor, ashamed. "Envious of how the boy opened up to you, of how Mr. Mendoza trusted you so quickly. I've been in this house for 20 years and never been seen that way." Lucy observed the housekeeper for a moment, seeing beyond the rigid facade, perceiving the lonely woman who had dedicated her life to a family that, in the end, had always kept her at a distance. "Ms. Bernice, do you know William's story about the astronaut who visits different planets?" The housekeeper seemed confused by the change of subject. "No, I don't." In the story, the astronaut discovers that each planet has its own guardian, someone who knows all the secrets, all the stories of the place. Without that guardian, the planet would lose its memory, its essence. Lucy smiled. "You are the guardian of Bellevue Estate. Without you, this house would lose its history, its traditions." Miss Bernice's eyes welled up, and for the first time since Lucy had met her, a genuine smile softened her stern face. "Thank you," she simply said, before withdrawing with her dignity restored. As the days passed, life on the estate found a new rhythm. William returned to school, initially for a few hours, then full-time. His physical progress continued to be impressive. He now spent entire days without using any support to walk. Richard, for his part, reduced his business trips and began working more from the estate, prioritizing time with his son. The evenings were now filled with board games, shared stories, and occasionally, music. William had resumed his piano lessons, abandoned after the accident. One night, while everyone in the house had already retired, Lucy remained on the veranda, contemplating the starry Virginia sky. She felt at peace, in a way she hadn't experienced in years, and at the same time restless about Richard's proposal. She had no doubts about her feelings for the boy. In her heart, she already considered him almost a son. But there were complications, issues of social class, hierarchy, what people would say. "A penny for your thoughts," Richard said, appearing silently beside her. Lucy smiled at the old-fashioned expression. "I was thinking about how life takes unexpected turns. A month ago I was in New York City, with no prospects, just surviving day by day. And now I feel alive again, as if I have a purpose." Richard sat beside her on the veranda, looking at the same expanse of starry sky. "Do you know what William asked me today?" "What?" "Well, if you could be his mother." Lucy felt her heart skip a beat. "Richard, I know. It's complicated. There are so many issues involved." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had learned to recognize as a sign of nervousness. But what if it wasn't? What if we could simplify everything? How? Richard turned to face her directly. "Stay with me, not as an employee, not as William's guardian, as my partner, my companion." Lucy was speechless, the shock evident on her face. "Richard, this is... You barely know me. I know enough. I saw how you risked everything to protect my son. I saw how you brought light back into this house, into our lives. I know it's premature, that it might seem crazy, but..." He held her hands. "When you know, you just know." Under the starry Blue Ridge Mountains sky, with the scent of coffee plantations all around, Lucy felt something she thought she would never feel again. Hope. Not just for a new job or a new home, but for a new family, a complete new life. "I need time," she finally replied. "It's not a simple decision." "All the time you need," Richard said, lightly squeezing her hands before releasing them. Just know that regardless of your answer, you will always have a place here. With William. With me. He stood up, wished her good night, and withdrew, leaving Lucy alone with her swirling thoughts and the Virginia sky as a silent witness to a transformation that was just beginning. 3 months had passed since Richard's proposal on the veranda under the stars. Bellevue Estate had completely transformed, not just in its physical structure, with the garden renovation and the reopening of the mansion's east wing that had remained closed since Helen's departure, but primarily in the energy that now filled its spaces. William, now almost 11, had fully returned to school and made new friends. His physical progress was remarkable. Most of the time he used only a light cane decorated with rocket and planet stickers, a gift from Lucy. On some days he could walk without any support, though still with a slight limp that, according to doctors, would likely be permanent. More important than his physical recovery was his emotional transformation. The boy had started to smile again, to play, to make plans. His nightmares had significantly decreased, and when they occasionally returned, he knew he wouldn't be alone when he woke up. It was a Sunday afternoon when Lucy, sitting on the edge of the property's artificial lake, watched William feed the colorful fish. Richard approached silently, bringing a tray with lemonade. "Would you like a refreshment?" "Josephine just made it." Lucy smiled, accepting the glass. "Thank you. It's a perfect day, isn't it?" Richard nodded, sitting beside her on the rustic bench. In recent months, they had developed a comfortable routine. Lucy was no longer considered a household employee. Richard had insisted on that, but she had not yet officially accepted his proposal. She remained at the estate as a kind of guest, a family friend who, little by little, had become indispensable to both of them. "William wants to go to the waterfall next weekend," Richard commented, watching his son, who was now chasing a butterfly, almost without limping. Lucy looked at him, surprised. The waterfall was the site of the accident, a place the boy had adamantly refused to visit since then. "He said that? Why?" "He said he wants to face his fear, that you taught him that being brave isn't not being afraid, but doing something even when you feel afraid." She smiled, remembering the conversation she had had with William weeks earlier. "He really is amazing." "Like the woman who inspired him," Richard replied, his gaze fixed on her. Lucy lowered her eyes, still uncomfortable with direct compliments. During the 3 months that had passed, Richard had been patient, respecting her time and space. He hadn't pressured her for an answer to his proposal, although his feelings were clear in small daily gestures, a lingering look, a flower picked especially for her in the garden, a song dedicated on the estate's radio. "You never told me why you came to Virginia," he said, slightly changing the subject. "Why you chose Bellevue Estate among so many places." Lucy looked at the horizon for a moment before replying. "My grandmother was from Virginia. She was born in Asheville, North Carolina, not far from here. When he passed away, I felt I needed a fresh start in a place that had some connection to my roots, but was completely new at the same time." "And why this estate specifically?" She smiled, a little embarrassed. "Actually, it was kind of by chance. I saw the job ad on the employment agency website, and something about the name Bellevue attracted me. It seemed like a place of hope." Richard gently took her hand, and it ended up becoming exactly that, for all of us. William approached running, interrupting the moment. "Dad, Lucy, look what I found." In his hands he held a small crayfish. "Can I keep him?" "Please," Lucy laughed. "Will he wouldn't be happy in an aquarium. He belongs in the lake with his family." The boy seemed to ponder the matter seriously. "Like us, right? We're happier together." Richard and Lucy exchanged a meaningful look over the boy's head. "Yes, like us," Richard replied softly. That night, after dinner, when William had already retired, Lucy found a simple envelope on her bed, with no address or sender. Inside it, a handmade card with colorful drawings she immediately recognized as William's, a naive but touching depiction of 3 figures holding hands: a tall man, a boy with a cane, and a woman with curly hair. Above them, in neat letters, "My Family." Alongside the card, a small black velvet box. Opening it, Lucy found a simple ring with a single emerald green stone, delicate and unostentatious, exactly the kind of jewelry she would appreciate. Tears came to her eyes. It wasn't a ring with expensive diamonds or rare stones, like the one Camilla wore. It was something specially designed for her, respecting who she was, without trying to transform her into something she wasn't. With a pounding heart, Lucy went downstairs, looking for Richard. She found him in the library, leafing through an old book, waiting. "I found your present," she said, standing in the doorway. Richard closed the book and stood up. "And?" "It's perfect. Simple, sincere. Like us," he completed, approaching her. Lucy nodded, emotional. "Like us. So, your answer?" She took a deep breath, confronting the last remnants of fear and insecurity in her heart. "I guess my answer is yes." Richard smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes and that Lucy had learned to love over the months. "It won't be easy," she warned. "There will be those who talk, who judge." "Let them talk," he replied, holding her hands. "What matters is that we found something rare, something many search for their entire lives and never find. A second chance. A genuine fresh start." Lucy smiled through her tears. "A fresh start." The next morning, breakfast was served on the main veranda, overlooking the coffee plantations. William was already at the table when Richard and Lucy appeared together, holding hands. "Good morning, Will," Lucy said, with a luminous smile. The boy looked at their intertwined hands, then at the ring on Lucy's finger, and his face broke into the purest smile. "You said yes." "I knew you would." Richard laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "How did you know?" "I wasn't so sure myself." "Because she's already my mom in my heart," William simply replied. "It just needed to be in real life too." Lucy felt tears return to her eyes, but this time they were tears of pure joy. "Come here," she called, opening her arms. The boy ran into her embrace almost without limping. Miss Bernice, who was serving coffee, smiled discreetly at the scene. "Congratulations, sir." "Madam," she added, with a new respect in her voice as she addressed Lucy. "I'm not madam yet." "Miss Bernice," Lucy laughed. "To me you already are," the housekeeper replied, with a warmth she had never shown before. In the months that followed, preparations for Richard and Lucy's official union proceeded at a calm pace, without haste. It would not be a grand or ostentatious event. Both preferred something intimate, with only the people who truly mattered. Meanwhile, life continued to flourish at Bellevue Estate. William had progressed so much in his physical therapy that he now spent entire days without using any support to walk. His return to school had been a complete success. The stories Lucy had taught him to tell had made the boy popular among his classmates, and his experience of overcoming adversity had transformed him into an example for other children facing difficulties. The news that Camilla had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for her actions arrived as confirmation of a cycle closing. Richard offered William the opportunity to visit his father's ex-fiancée in prison, perhaps to gain emotional closure, but the boy politely refused. "I'm not angry with her," he explained with a wisdom beyond his years. "I just don't want to look back anymore. I want to look forward." That was exactly what everyone was doing, looking forward. On a particularly special afternoon, Richard, Lucy, and William finally made the long-deferred trip to the waterfall. The place was of exuberant beauty, crystal-clear waters falling over ancient rocks, surrounded by the lush vegetation of the preserved woodlands on the property. William hesitated for a moment upon arrival, holding Richard's and Lucy's hands firmly. But then he took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Mom always loved this place," he said, looking at the waterfall. "She said this was where she felt most alive." Richard nodded, emotional at the spontaneous mention of Helen, something William rarely did. "Yes, it was her favorite place on the entire estate." Lucy remained silent, respecting the moment between father and son, the memory they both shared. "I think she'd be happy to know we came back here," the boy continued, "and that we're not sad all the time anymore." "I'm sure she would, son," Richard replied. His voice choked. William let go of the adult's hands and walked to the edge of the lake formed by the waterfall. He knelt and touched the water with his fingertips. "You know, sometimes I dream about her," he said, without turning around. "She's always smiling and tells me that everything is all right now." Lucy approached, gently placing her hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's because it is. Will, everything is all right now." The boy stood up and, to their surprise, walked steadily to the center of the clearing, without any support, without limping. There he lifted his face to the sun filtering through the trees and smiled. Yes, it is all right, he agreed. On the way back to the house, William ran ahead chasing butterflies, while Richard and Lucy walked hand in hand a few steps behind. Thank you, Richard said suddenly. For what? For bringing life back into our family, for teaching me to look forward without denying the past, for loving my son as if he were your own. Lucy squeezed his hand. He is mine. In my heart, as he himself said. Richard stopped, turning to face her. Do you believe in destiny, Lucy? She thought for a moment before answering. I believe life puts us exactly where we need to be, even when we don't understand why. Like an extraordinary woman who appears at the door of a sad house on a misty Virginia morning, or like a man and a boy who teach that woman that it's possible to love again, even after losing what seemed to be everything. They kissed under the golden light filtering through the ancient trees, while William, now completely free from the physical and emotional limitations that had imprisoned him, ran along the path with the exuberant energy of any 11-year-old boy. On a sunny Tuesday morning, without great pomp or extravagant ceremonies, Richard and Lucy formalized their union in a simple registry office in Richmond, Virginia. William, dressed in his first suit, was the proud best man, holding the rings with solemn responsibility. Back at the estate, a small celebration gathered the closest staff: Josephine, Miss Bernice Matthew, now promoted to head of security, and a few others. There was carrot cake, William's favorite, champagne for the adults, and music playing softly on the old gramophone in the living room. I want to make a toast, William announced, raising his juice glass. To my new family, to my dad, who is the bravest man I know, and to my mom, Lucy, who taught us that love is stronger than any difficulty. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Richard hugged his son with one arm, while keeping Lucy close with the other. To family, he agreed, and to new beginnings. Later, when the party had ended and the house was silent, Lucy found herself alone in the kitchen, preparing a cup of tea. William appeared at the door, already in his pajamas. Can't sleep? She asked. The boy shook his head, approaching. I wanted to show you something. He held out his hand, offering a folded piece of paper. Opening it, Lucy recognized one of the colorful notes she had left on William's bedroom door that first month at the estate. It simply said, "Courage. Sometimes it's just about taking one small step at a time." I saved all of them, the boy confessed. They were the first thing that made me feel that maybe I could be okay again. Lucy hugged him tightly, feeling that expansion in her chest that only genuine love can bring. Thank you for saving them, Will, and thank you for letting me into your life. Thank you for not giving up on me, he replied, returning the hug. I love you, Mum. The words, spoken for the first time so directly, resonated in Lucy's soul like an echo of healing, redemption, and a promise fulfilled. From Gabriel to William, from loss to reunion, from pain to joy, the circle closed not as an end but as a new beginning. I love you too, my son, she replied, kissing his forehead. More than you know. The next morning, Richard found Lucy in the kitchen, preparing pancakes for breakfast. Good morning, Mrs. Mendoza, he teased, hugging her from behind. It still sounds strange, she laughed, turning to face him, but I think I can get used to it. Any plans for today? I thought about taking William for a walk to the waterfall. He wants to show me how he can swim now. Richard smiled, marveling at the naturalness with which they had become a family. Sounds perfect. At that moment, William entered the kitchen, walking steadily, without any trace of a limp. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Mom. Pancakes. He approached Lucy, taking a pancake directly from the skillet, earning a loving tap on the hand as a reprimand. Wait until you sit at the table, young man. William laughed, getting plates from the cupboard to help set the table. The sun streamed through the kitchen windows, bathing the three in golden light. Outside, birds sang among the coffee plantations, and life at Bellevue Estate continued, not as before, not as a return to what had been lost, but as something new, something rebuilt, a family woven not by blood but by choice, by the courage to look forward, by the determination to transform loss into rebirth, by faith in the dawn after the darkest night, and most importantly, by the love that chooses to stay, that persists, that heals, that illuminates the path ahead step by step, day by day, heart to heart. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Lucy, Richard, and William has deeply touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about new beginnings, second chances, and the transformative power of true love. Find it by clicking the link on the left. If this narrative of healing and new horizons resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life in its many facets, and we want to know, what moment in this story moved you the most? William's first smile? The revelation of Camilla's schemes? Or perhaps the moment Lucy finally said yes to a new beginning? Share in the comments and become part of this community that celebrates the power of narratives that transform us. Until the next story.